All right, we're trying a little experiment here.
Yes, this is Rum Rants, the morning after.
Or Rum Rants after dawn.
Which is weird. I'm actually way more coherent than I normally am.
Well, to be honest, we really didn't tie it on last night like we have in the past.
That's true.
I personally took it pretty slow.
I did too.
Yeah, and in fact, compared to the last time we were recording, when I was barely conscious, Stan was not, and you weren't that far behind.
No, I wasn't.
But anyway, at any rate, about 1:15 last night or so, we were kind of
weird.
petering out. Yeah, that was kind of early for us, wasn't it?
This was just
What
weird.
is it? It's a cigarette. A cigarette got shut in your computer.
How?
I don't know. It's one of yours. It's a light.
Right.
So I don't know. It's just Jay's computer.
Perfectly flat.
Yeah.
We should take a picture of this. It's
Jay,
awesome.
yeah, I will. Jay's computer was closed, and somehow he'd closed a cigarette in it.
And it perfectly ironed it.
Yeah, it like flattened it like a rose in a book. You know, take flowers and squish them.
There's
into
no
books.
wrinkles or anything.
No.
It's kind of awesome.
Take a
Even the tobacco's not even sticking out of it. It's
No.
just, it's weirdly
It just
perfect.
looks like a flatworm cigarette.
Yeah.
Really strange. Anyway, so, but just to reiterate, this is the next morning. This is after our recording session on the 29th.
Obviously, as we're talking about
Right.
cigarettes
This
and
is
other crap that we might find it on.
Yeah, and it's approximately 10:45 this morning. We've already been up for a couple hours watching cartoons. Now, the
Weirdly.
reason... Yeah.
Well, it's Saturday, so we had to do Looney Tunes.
Yeah, we had to do some Looney Tunes. That's true. But during last night at the end, we'd come across this interesting set of videos on WatchMojo.com's YouTube page. Now, we just want to reiterate, this is a list. WatchMojo does great countdown lists. They really do comics and movies and everything. They have countdown lists for everything. 10 hottest chicks in the world or something. And they're a fun page to go to. And while we were looking at some movie trailers last night, Jay noticed a list for the top 10 best Transformers, and they're divided into the Autobots and Decepticons respectively. Now, I just want to reiterate before we get into this, they specifically state in there, and we're not going to play it, go watch it, go see hear their YouTube page, but they make it very clear they are referring to G1 cartoon only. And because G1 technically also encompasses the first run of the toys from like 84 to 90 something, and the first generation comics from 1 to 80 that I'm a big fan of. And plus, if those two things were included in this G1, for me, the list would be very different. Because there's things about the toys and things about the comics that are very important to me. But they just stuck with the show. We watched both of their episodes on it twice. We made our own list, kind of, some spots where we think these things are a little different. But let's just go through their list first.
Well, I was thinking, say their list.
Okay. Now, for WatchMojo.com, and I'm just going to read them. They have little explanations for all of them. I'm just going to go ahead and read them. Anybody who might be listening to us would probably know who all these characters are. For the Autobots to start with, number 10, Hot Rod.
What was that universal greeting again? Never mind, I remember.
Ba weep grana, weep nitty bong.
Number 9, Mirage.
I'll say hello to Prime for you, Megatron. Happy landing.
Number 8, Prowl.
Stay clear, Blue Streak.
7, Grimlock.
Me, Grimlock, not nice dino. Me, bash brains.
6, Ratchet.
Hey, everybody, listen up. Teletran just picked up the Decepticons. They're on their way.
5, Wheeljack.
Thanks, Auto Buddies. You know, it sure is nice when one of my inventions actually works.
4, Ironhide.
Now, if my detectors can only find that Cosmo whatchamacallit.
3, Jazz.
Okay, Decepticons, time to get down.
2, Bumblebee.
Prime told me there'd be days like this.
And 1, Optimus Prime. Kind of a given.
Right.
We're Autobots. We're from Cybertron, a planet far from Earth.
Now, for the Decepticons, they were a little bit more... I think with the Decepticons, they added a few more weird ones.
Definitely one.
Definitely one, yeah. But their number 10 was Skywarp.
Watch it, you metallic mini meatball, or I'll step on you.
9, Thundercracker.
I'd rather bash Prime one-on-one, but when Megatron says, Thundercracker games!
You blew it, Thundercracker.
8, Astro Train.
Jettison some weight, or I'll never make it to Cybertron.
7, Bruticus, which is all the Combaticons together.
Bruticus, angry.
A 6, Devastator, all the Constructicons.
Prepare for extermination.
5, Shockwave.
Entering final countdown phase. If energy pylons are not operational, Cybertron will be catapulted into oblivion.
4, the cassettes, all of them. Ravage, Laserbeak, Rumble.
Rumble Frenzy, Ravage, Ratbat, Eject, Operation Interference.
3, Soundwave.
As you command, Megatron.
2, of course, Starscream. And 1, Megatron.
You're an idiot, Starscream.
Now, that was their list, and they had little justifications for each one. I think their list was a little limiting, especially with the Autobots. But Jay, there's something you want to point out right off the bat?
Yeah, the list.
Which one? The Autobots or the Decepticons?
Both.
Both, okay.
It doesn't matter.
All right.
First, the character. If you never watch these, they're usually great. These lists, there was a lot of editing mistakes in the list.
Yes, they were done by kids who aren't really that familiar with the show.
It wasn't that.
Oh, well, some things I caught.
I'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
It wasn't that. It was like, he goes at number 6, and I'm like, that's number 7.
Yeah, he did discount at one point.
And in both of them, a lot of just little editorial mistakes that just were wrong. And then every reading was the character reading that came from the box or came from Hasbro. And I caught that when they did Prowl. You know, that was word for word Prowl's description by his character bio that you would find on.
Oh, so they just read from the cards on the back of the.
That's all they did.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't catch that because I've read the Transformers Universe comics for a long time, and those are more descriptive than the box ones. But you're right, the box ones are like little blurbs. And they probably read straight from them.
And that's exactly what he did. As soon as he said, you know, Prowl's a military scientist, logistics who loves da-da-da. I was like,
blah, blah, blah,
I've always known that line because Prowl's my favorite Transformer. So that's all they did was read from the box and keep going.
So they probably figured at Mojo. I mean, this is a guess, of course. They do good work, but they probably figured, hey, we could do this list, and we've got a pre-written thing that we could read from, pretty much.
The second one, the second thing that I had a problem with the list is every character, 19 out of 20 characters were from the very first 2 seasons.
Yes, I noticed that too.
They kind of combined, when we got to the Decepticons, they kind of combined characters where they said Megatron turned into Galvatron. Yes, I understand that they were the same, but they were 2 totally different characters. One,
very much so.
Megatron didn't kill Starscream, and that's the first damn thing Galvatron did.
Which they, of course, show in the list.
Who disrupts my coronation?
Coronation, Starscream? This is bad comedy.
Megatron? Is that you?
Here's a hint.
But they were 2 different. Scourge and Thundercracker, 2 completely different.
Oh yeah, and Cyclonus and Skywarp. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I had an issue with. Is even with the Autobots, you didn't, Ironhide or Cup is just another fabrication Ironhide.
Terrible rapping, young punk. I'll straighten you out yet.
Maybe not the greatest character, but there was still good characters. Cyclonus, Galvatron should have been on the top 10, if not number 2 or 3 or 4, somewhere around there. So there was just no mention of any of those characters, which, Retgar was good.
Don't look behind door number 2, Monty. It's time to play. End of the line, my Valentine. Do Ronnie, do run, Ronnie, more.
As far as the Autobot side, I was expecting I made a prediction of the top 6 and actually put RC in there.
Yeah.
Because I was going for also popularity and, she was a hot car robot.
Since you wrecked our ship, we're going to have to take yours. Therefore, you're going to have to take a hike. Got it?
And she didn't really become popular in any other media until years later in the comic.
Yeah, and she was the only girl robot.
Well, the only regular one. There were other ones.
Yeah.
In one episode. 1 or 2.
So that kind of...
Alita 1 or something I think her name was.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was kind of disappointing that none of them, even Decepticon or Autobot, even made the list. So they basically kept to the very first 2 seasons of
Well,
the
it's technically the
Transformers.
first 2 seasons and the movie, nothing else.
Yeah.
And that's only because the one was in the movie.
Now, another
Rodimus.
thing, is they also stuck to characters that had their own feature cartoons. And I'm going to start with number 9 of the Autobots.
Okay, Mirage.
Mm-hmm. He had his own feature.
Yes, his own special episode.
And that's, kind of where you figured out that this guy misses home. Maybe he's had too much battle. He's a pacifist, PTSD. He just wants to go home. He's like, I'm done with this. Just, kind of like, I'm not even going to say it. Whatever.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But, I mean, he just wants to go home. He's like, can we go home now? Like,
can I go?
But he was the only one in that first 2. Now, later on, they had a bunch of characters that had their own featurettes. The Corvette had his own featurette.
Corvette, which one?
He was very vain.
Oh, Sunstreaker. He's a Lamborghini. Sunstreaker was the vain Lamborghini. And Sideswipe was his twin brother, which they don't even mention in this list.
No. Those are the twins. This is afterwards. He was a blue Corvette.
Tracks.
I'd rather stay in my stunning auto mode, but then I couldn't do this.
Yeah.
Okay, Tracks. Yeah.
He had his own.
He's a cool character, actually.
Powerglide was a main character in a lot of them.
In like the second season, yeah.
And he fell in love with a girl.
Who are you?
Powerglide's the name.
Well, whoever you are, I think you're completely the greatest.
Thanks. Now listen.
Oh, I want to go flying again.
Aw, come on. Will you shut up and listen?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
And
he not only had his own episode, but he had a dual episode.
Yeah. Plus Sea Spray, didn't he fall in love with a mermaid or something?
Do you really think that I would disappear like the droids?
You're both machines, aren't you?
Is that how you think of me?
Sea Spray, you're my friend.
Maybe that is all I am, a bunch of transistors and bolts.
Sea Spray, Cosmos was another one.
Cosmos was great. I thought of him too, yeah. Now,
but they all had their own features, which would make them a little bit more, I can't say more important than the original, but they appeared more than actually the first ones where you talk about Huffer and Gears only appeared every once in a while, where Powerglide was when he was introduced to him, or Cosmos.
Or even Warpath. Warpath was a big personality in the second season.
Because I'm gentle.
Oh, yeah. So, although those were annoying characters, I didn't really care for them.
Yeah.
The fact that...
Especially with the way Sea Spray would talk.
None of those clips were shown, even in the list. Like, you wouldn't even see, Sea Spray standing next to Ironhide or Powerglide. But there was kind of difference. They didn't really have intermixed those, I guess, what would that be, season 2?
Season 2.
So everybody from this list was basically
season 1, really, except for Rodimus.
From that poster, that came with your Transformer,
which is like they read the descriptions right off that poster.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they did, except for Hot Rod and Bruticus.
Yeah, little lazy writing there, Mojo.
Yeah,
but that's okay. I get it. They were cutting a corner. It makes sense. Now, let's stick with the Autobots right now, the first one.
All right.
I added some names on here that I thought also should have been.
I think I listed every Autobot that
well, if you think about it, if you were to choose, out of the 10, they choose 9 from first generation, first season, there was only 12 of them on the planet at the time. So, of course, they're going to be most of the ones.
That was the same with, when you did that with there was very fewer. I think it was, if I remember right, it was 9 to 12.
Something like that.
Decepticons to Autobots.
Yeah. Because the Decepticons did outnumber. Well, the Decepticons were more powerful.
Right.
But there were more Autobots, but they were like mini-cons. They were like the little guys. They just...
Yeah, the wheels and cliff jumpers.
Yeah.
And
all that stuff.
Yeah.
Now, that was another thing I wanted to mention when you mentioned Mirage, because it was Cliff Jumper that didn't trust him in the episode, who kept calling him a traitor.
Good news, Prime. I've located the missing electro cells in the same area Mirage patrolled yesterday.
That theme continued through the comic books clear up until recently. Mirage was always the one they weren't sure about, which I think is actually an interesting character arc. Now, in terms of, for me, in my opinion...
Number 10 was Hot Rod.
Hot Rod, yeah. To be honest, not a big Hot Rod fan.
I liked Hot Rod.
I liked him in the film.
Here's...
Kinda.
I liked Hot Rod. Here, you gotta remember, Hot Rod's like maybe 15.
in
maybe
Transformer years, yeah.
Somewhere 15, 19.
Yeah, so
right?
about 15 million years old.
Yeah. Rodimus.
Well, Rodimus, I've been recently watching the old shows again, and some of them are a little hard to watch, but Rodimus has this interesting arc of he was thrust into this leadership position that he wasn't ready for, and he still wants to be a kid. And he kind of keeps fucking it up, and that's why in the fourth season, the truncated fourth season with the Headmasters, they put him back to being Hot Rod again, and brought Optimus Prime back, because Rodimus was such a weak character in comparison.
Well, his self-doubt always got into the way.
Which Ultra Magnus would have been way better.
I don't think so.
I think so.
I'm just a soldier. I'm not worthy.
Ultra Magnus was the soldier, exactly what he knew what he was.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was the sergeant, the old,
But him going around basically saying, "I don't want to be the leader. I don't want to be the leader. I don't want to be the leader."
Bitch and moan.
You don't try to give the Matrix to somebody else. You take. Now I know you and I did that. No, man, you be in charge.
You be in charge.
You be in charge.
But we were equals. That was different.
Yeah.
Neither one of us was distinctly in charge.
No. But the difference is like saying, "I don't want to be the leader. You take it," versus going to like somebody like Cup and saying, "Dude, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you help me out?" There's two different things. That's two distinctive things.
That's true.
Where you're pansing out of being leader. You're it. You got to man up and own it. And we talk about Arrow, and like he's a great leader because he owns it.
Takes all the responsibility on himself.
Yeah. There was a great scene in the last episode where Felicity walks in and says, "You're beating yourself up again." And he goes, "I have to.
Yeah, that's my job."
But he stands up, he owns it, but he doesn't let anybody else, or if he does, it's the confidant that recognizes it. Like, dude, I need your help, but I don't want you to just take the whole thing.
Right.
And I think that was the biggest problem with Rodimus is he just
kept trying to pawn it off.
Yeah. So
there was even an episode where he lost the Matrix and was just wandering around his hot rod again for a while.
Yeah.
That actually reminds me of a great line that Kevin Spacey gives in Bug's Life.
She's learning to take over from me, Hopper.
Oh, I see. Under new management. So it's your fault.
No, it wasn't me. It wasn't.
First rule of leadership. Everything is your fault.
Which is, he delivers it so well. Now, in terms of the Autobots in the first list, there was a couple in here that I probably would have included, or at least replaced some of these. Most of these original generation guys I like more because of the toys than because of the show. Especially guys like Grimlock and Wheeljack, because their characters were... Wheeljack's character had a pretty good arc, but Grimlock's was awful. I much prefer the comic book Grimlock. The one in the show is just horrible. He got kind of funny in the third season because he was funny comic relief in the movie.
Yeah, he got dumber. It's weird.
He got dumber, but more endearing.
Why you think Grimlock's stupid? Me not stupid. Grimlock's smartest Dinobot of all.
Which is fine, but in the first first season or second season, whenever he came about, I think it was the second season, he was just obnoxious. They were talking like that. It just drove me crazy. But anyway, I would have considered, I was a little disappointed there was only one. Now, first off, I want to mention that when Jay and I first found this list, Jay made the question of, well, I don't understand. They said G1, but they're including Hot Rod. I said, well, technically, G1 includes the third and fourth seasons.
Yeah,
that's all G1.
G1.
Yeah. G2 doesn't come about until mid-90s. So that made sense. Now, in that regard, I wish they'd have had more third season characters in there, because I think Cup would have been great on that list. Skylinks. I think Skylinks is a great character. He was integral to the return of Optimus Prime. He had this wonderful attitude. He had this effete snob attitude. He was kind of badass in the show, even in the cartoon. Way better in the comics.
Now, remember, before you do anything, think, is this what Skylinks would do in my position?
Omega Supreme, we're a little disappointed he didn't get included. Ultra Magnus, I think, is one of my favorite characters, both the toy and the cartoon. Blur. Now, I totally would have included Blur on this list. Blur was a lot of fun.
Yeah, Blur was another one that you could go on, what I would say, after the movie. Pre-movie, post-movie.
Post-movie, yeah. Also, I would have included, and this is actually the Transformer that's one of my favorites in the comic, the toy, and the show, because he had the best arc in all three, Jetfire.
Yeah.
Jetfire was the bomb because even in both the comic and the show, he started out as a Decepticon. He was kind of tricked into it and then became an Autobot, and he was integral to that whole story arc. Plus, as the toy, he was the baddest of the badass of the original G1 toys. He was a remold of the Robotech Valkyrie, the Robotech Skull 1, which there's actually a sticker set out there you can get and put it on your Jetfire, so he has the Macross Skull 1 markings. But he's still my holy grail of toys. I still am trying to find an original G1 Jetfire, but they're expensive. Now, I did note, though, that when they talked about Mirage hating being at Cybertron, I also remembered Gears and Huffer being grumpy, too, all the time, especially Huffer about being on Earth. Well, and Gears was just mean to everybody.
Basically, they're your E4s where their first enlistment is up.
You're late.
You're late. Yeah, because they're always yelling at Bumblebee, who's the brand new, you know, straight out of basic training, you know.
Pretty much, yeah. And they listed Bumblebee on this list as well, which Bumblebee, until the new movie, drove me crazy because Bumblebee was the little fucker who kept getting him in all kinds of shit.
Oh, yeah.
That drove me I hated that. I know it was a plot device, but...
Yeah, he's kind of more the antagonist than anything.
He causes more shit than Starscream. Now, Blaster...
Yeah, music, the universal language.
Blaster, for me, again, was way more important in the comics, especially the first 40, but I think he was kind of neat. His characterization was kind of neat from the film forward because he was barely in season 2.
I was gonna say that is because there was. I said when we were watching this, you know, Grimlock was the only one that went.
No, there's one more, and I'll point it out.
Then there was Blaster, and then there was the Microscope.
Yep, I have him in here. Perceptor was cool in the original the second season. He didn't come back to the second season, and he was an integral part of the third season and the movie. As a matter of fact, he was the one, besides Grimlock, the one first Jenner that was running around with Ultra Magnus and everybody. He was the one guy from the original first 2 seasons. And because they included Bruticus and Devastator on the Decepticons one, I figured Superion. I figured they would have, if not Omega Supreme, they at least would have put Superion in there.
Right.
Because Superion's individual characters all had really distinctive character traits. In fact, Silverbolt, the leader, was scared of heights. He was afraid of heights. And I thought that's amazing to give that characterization, and I think that was in the cards too, to a jet, especially that, what was he? He was the Concorde, wasn't he? Like the supersonic passenger jet. And for him to be scared of heights really kind of cracked me up. So that's pretty much most of my notes on the Autobot side. Again, trying to avoid the comics. If you guys ever get the chance, read, there's trade paperbacks out of the original Marvel comics from 1 to 80. From 40 to 80, they were written by, I believe he's British, I could be wrong, by a guy by the name of Simon Furman, who originally wrote the British comic, which go back and read those too as well. But sometime in the mid-80s, they combined into the one title for Marvel, and then he just recently completed his story that they were kind of canceled back in the 80s in a series called Regeneration 1, which continues the very same story from the 80s. That's my one plug for that. Simon, he's my favorite Transformers author. Now, for the Decepticons. We might as well just rattle off the list here real quick. And I do like most of them on this list. I just think that there were ones that were better. Number 10, Skywarp. Did we do this already? Did I already say this?
You already read the list.
Okay.
But you can go again.
Well, let's just recap. Skywarp, Thundercracker, Astrotrain. This is in descending order. Bruticus, Devastator, Shockwave, the Cassette, Soundwave, Starscream, and Megatron. Now, I would have left the Seekers off there entirely because as cool as those characters kind of are, they were ancillary characters. They really didn't. I think maybe Skywarp had his own individual episode because he was the one who was not quite loyal. Or no, it was Thundercracker.
Thundercracker
was the one not quite loyal. Yeah, Skywarp was, although he has an awesome ability. I mean, can you imagine teleporting into?
Well, he was the very first. He was my very first Transformer I ever owned. So
he's still in the case next door, isn't he? Yeah.
But I agree with you. Is Skywarp and again, because they just went off the very first season. Like, all right, well, we'll just rank these. I think there's 12 of them.
Yeah.
Where Skywarp, I think would have been great right there, and actually had more of a key effective role in the entire series. Reflector.
There, that was the last bit of info I needed. Stealing the antimatter formula is gonna be a piece of oil cake.
Absolutely. In the series, especially.
Yeah, because he was, he was.
I can't believe they didn't mention him. He was like this primary spy besides Laserbeak.
Well, he was the pawn basically of everything. He's like, carry this, move that, shoot it down. But he was always there. Now, he didn't have many lines. He didn't have many scenes, but Reflector was.
And the drawing of him wasn't that great in the show. The toy was way better.
Yeah.
But you're right. But he was in almost every episode of the first season. And that's a good point.
But I think it's just because he didn't have any lines. He was just your basic pawn, extra, if you will.
Yeah.
And that's basically what he was an extra on there. But you go again, it's like you go to, after post movie, there was better characters or who they turned into. Scourge wasn't great, but
at least he had a character arc. Like
he did.
Yeah. Kind of went a little crazy.
What's the other one? Cyclonus.
Cyclonus.
He was a badass.
Yes, he was.
Yeah, like he
even thought Galvatron was an idiot.
Yeah,
like
he was a badass. He could basically he's like if Galvatron was 1, he's like 1A. He's kind of like and we'll talk about him a little bit later. He was more like Shockwave, where he might actually be able to beat Galvatron had he wanted to. So I think he could have at least replaced one of these two. At least.
Yeah, I agree.
For being a more
especially Astro Train. The only thing about Astro Train is the triple changer. That's the only.
Astro Train is interesting because he's one of the Decepticons, and maybe the only Decepticon that actually went from season, other than Starscream.
The Constructicons.
Starscream came back to life.
The Ghost, yeah.
But because he was the transport, he was the only one that lived through both, pre and post. He was the transport. He was a main. I can't say character, but he was a main line in the series.
I'd say a baseline character.
Yeah.
Like he was always kind of there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So his importance is there. His character, I thought it was interesting. I never really liked him as a kid. He annoyed me. But when they put it, I was like, yeah, that's kind of true. I think he actually kind of belongs right where he's at.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Bruticus, I was kind of surprised. I understand why Devastator was there. Devastator's the original combiner. But when they first put Bruticus in there, I was kind of like, really? I thought about it. Bruticus is cool on the toy side because they're the Combaticons. They're the military vehicles. But on the show side, I don't think he was all that integral. I think maybe Predaking or Abominus would have been far more, especially Predaking. He's my favorite Decepticon combiner of all time.
Well, Predaking and Bruticus for both matters.
Menasor was actually, I thought, more important than Bruticus. The Stunticons.
I was going to get to him in a second.
Okay.
So where Bruticus and Predaking, they're one-shot episodes, one-shot wonders, where Menasor and the Aerial Bots intermixed because they had those episodes were dedicated just to those two groups of characters, and they also made way more appearances throughout the show.
Yeah. I mean, Motormaster at one point took out Prime. I remember in one of the first episodes, went toe-to-toe with him.
According to Teletran 1, Motormaster should be coming down this road right about now.
Well, look who's here! The old king of the road! When I'm finished with you, you'll be king of the junkyard! I've been waiting for this a long time, Prime!
Which is actually pretty impressive in this series.
So yeah, Bruticus, Bruticus was in the very first season. Where
No, he was not. He was in at least the second season. Menasor was the combiner from the besides Devastator.
I think Bruticus was before.
No, Bruticus was after, because Starscream ran away and built Bruticus, kind of. I'm pretty sure he's after. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure.
Well, yeah, I thought Bruticus was kind of weird sitting there. I was like, and what? Bruticus.
Yeah. Now, I do agree with Devastator. Devastator's awesome. He's the... They even brought him back for the film. There were so many other combiners by the time the film came out. They could have chosen anything, except they bring back Devastator, because everyone wants to see Devastator. And who do they put against him? The Dinobots, which is cool. That's one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
But which Devastator?
What are you talking about? Which Devastator?
Oh, I'm sorry.
You lost me.
I was thinking the movie, not... okay, 1985, got it.
Yeah, but Devastator, he was so cool that they actually brought him back for the movie as opposed to one of the newer combiners. Now, I've heard the producers say this before, specifically regarding the death of Optimus Prime, because as any guy our age, we're 40, as any guy our age who grew up watching Transformers, the death of Prime was traumatic. Like, it was like the death of Bambi's mom to 2 generations ago. It was a big deal, and the producers of the show and the toy makers had no idea this backlash was going to happen, because they were like, we were just trying to reintroduce the new toys. That's all we were doing with the movie, was go from the old toys to the newer toys. And we figured, well, let's make a little drama and we'll kill Prime. And fucking there was an uproar, especially when they replaced him with pussy ass Rodimus Prime. Now, Galvatron was a cool step up from Megatron, but not Rodimus Prime, and which of course is why they recanted and brought back Prime, which they kind of did in the comics as well. That being said, that's why I'm glad that Devastator's there. Now, next on the list would be my favorite in the comics and the toys. Not even close to my favorite in the cartoons. I think he was really underutilized.
No. You're skipping one.
No, I went through Devastator,
mm-hmm.
and this is Shockwave.
No, the next one was Shockwave's cassettes.
No. The next one was Shockwave. Cassettes was after, and then Soundwave.
No, you got that backwards.
No, that's not true. I want to watch it again.
Yeah.
Because
I have on mine Shockwave's cassettes. Shockwave. Yeah, it was the cassettes.
No.
Yeah.
It goes Devastator, Shockwave, cassette, Soundwave.
Hold up.
Okay.
All right.
Fine.
Yeah.
Shockwave. Are you looking at this? It's Shockwave.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking Soundwave. I thought you said Soundwave.
No, I said Shockwave.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, let me finish what I was thinking. Shockwave was one of my favorites in the comic because he was badass. In fact, he took on Megatron toe-to-toe in the comics. And in the toy, he's one of the coolest toys they had.
Right.
Like, even his clones, the fake ones they made, like the one you have, they're just cool toys. He makes this awesome ray gun that makes noise, and you could play, not only could you play Transformers with him, but you could run around playing Buck Rogers or whatever else with him, too. He just was a really awesome toy. The only bad thing was that his barrel, because his hinges would get loose, and this happened with Jetfire, too. Hinges would get loose, and they'd flop, like you couldn't keep the barrel up straight.
Right.
It looked like a melting comic book gun, cartoon gun. Like, I'm shooting my foot. But yeah, Shockwave was the next on the list. I think the show, they even mentioned in this list, Mojo did, and I think that might have been part of Shockwave's character bio, if I remember correctly, is that he was as powerful as Megatron and smarter than Megatron.
That was word for word.
Yeah, and could take him out if he so chose.
Yeah.
Kind of like Cyclonus.
Yeah.
But they made better use of that in the comics, way better use of it in the comics than they did in the show. In the show, he was just kind of ancillary. He's the one that keeps the door open. He's the one that keeps the door open to Cybertron. That's it. That was his job.
Well, he's the guardian of Cybertron.
Yeah.
That's basically what he is.
And I felt so bad in the movie. He had that one great line where he steps out and goes, "We're under attack, scramble," and then that's it. Shockwave's just gone after that point. I was really hoping that in the third season they would utilize Shockwave.
Yeah. After the movie or somewhere, he's...
In the comics, he was like this mad scientist, Spock type character that constantly he created the triple changers by mutating them, and had the Autobots hanging from the ceiling so he could steal their energy, and had Optimus Prime's head on a table so he could steal the Matrix from him. It was just, the comics were awesome, but he was pretty poor in the. But then now the cassettes,
Shockwave was like the prince of.
Yeah,
he's purple.
It's purple. That's a good point.
And you got excited when you saw him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
on the rare occasion you saw him, you got excited like, it's Shockwave.
And actually, the people who created the character said they based him on Spock.
Yeah.
You look at his like this pointy head pieces. Now, granted, the toy was an original toy back in Japan, but when they saw that toy, they're like, "Hey, that's like Mr. Spock. Let's make him all computer and logical." So that's why I loved him too, because I always knew that. Now, the next one on the list is all the cassettes. Now, the cassettes were cool because they kept adding cassettes as years went on. But of course, then there's the core 4: Ravage, Rumble, Frenzy, and what was the other fourth main one?
Laserbeak. And you're missing one.
Well, Buzzsaw.
Well,
Buzzsaw in the toys. You're right. He was in the show a couple times.
Yeah.
But Buzzsaw was the cassette that came with Soundwave.
Right.
Whereas, now here's the thing I was going to get to though. The toys and the cartoon. This is one of the first major discrepancies. The first minor discrepancy was Jetfire, because some ads and some books erroneously referred to Jetfire at first as Skyfire, and that got really confusing. But ultimately the toy and the show both called him Jetfire, and that was it. The other discrepancy was Rumble and Frenzy. In the show, now granted, these shows were scripted and storyboarded here and then sent to like Korea or something for animation. So there's a lot. If you watch the original Generation show, there's a ton of animation mistakes. There's like lasers that come from nowhere. Like, where's the Decepticon that's supposed to be there? There's all kinds of shit that happens like that. But it's funny, it's like watching Star Wars, and you gotta love the mistakes too. But this was the major discrepancy that actually drove us nuts as kids, because we all debated, okay, do we buy Frenzy and pretend he's Rumble because he's blue in the show, or do we buy the Rumble figure, which was red in the toy?
Right.
And they always got that backwards in the show, and it drove us nuts as kids. But ultimately, at least where I was from, we settled on the one that's called Rumble is the one that is Rumble.
Right.
And that's the one we bought. And Frenzy was like, nobody had Frenzy. And he's like, the blue guy, who has that guy? Well, he's the one in the show, but that's not Rumble, you know? Dicks about it when it came to the toys. Other than that, though, I am a big fan of the cassettes. I think especially Laserbeak and Ravage. For one, they didn't talk back. Motherfuckers. And two, they always got their shit accomplished. Even in the movie, Megatron says, some of my warriors never fail me.
Yeah.
And it was always Laserbeak always got his ass handed to him, but he always get the job done for the most part. So those I agree with.
And even like the little clip, you know, where Rumble puts Hound down in the cliff.
Yeah.
And he looks at Spike and just
knocks him out of the way.
Hey, I'm done. Go away.
And wasn't it so gratifying in the first film when you saw Soundwave attack Blaster and all the cassettes came out? You're like, yeah, because at that point, Blaster had been in the show, but none of the Autobot cassettes had been in the show, even though they'd come out in toys. Eject, Rewind, Steeljaw, and Ramhorn, I want to say.
I think so, yeah.
And we've got Steeljaw, Eject, and I don't remember if there's another one. We've got a couple of the cassettes in the display case in the next room. But yeah, we were so excited to see all the mini. They weren't mini cons back then, but they were the closest thing to mini cons going at it. Now, of course, after that, then we get to Soundwave.
Right.
Now, Soundwave was another character that was, I think, underutilized in the show and had way better characterization in the comic. But even in the show, he was cool. He had that great computer voice. We always waited for him. He was such an effete kind of kiss ass. Although he was out for himself occasionally. There were some times when Soundwave was like, I'm fucking out of here.
Yeah, I'm out of here. And what bothered me about Soundwave...
Here it comes.
You know, because, Starscream always tried to gain power, and up until the movie where they started fighting, I should be in charge, even Soundwave didn't come up and say, I should be in charge.
No, he did.
Did he?
In the movie, I remember very clearly, because... the Constructicons came up and says, we make the most powerful robot, we should rule. And Soundwave's response is, Soundwave superior, Constructicons inferior. Who you call it inferior? They get into that fight. He's the one who starts the fight.
And Rumble starts quaking. Okay.
Yeah. Let's kick tailgate. So actually Soundwave did make that one play for power. That was it.
But I mean, he didn't challenge,
he didn't openly challenge Megatron, no.
No, but when Starscream was like, I have the power, Soundwave never
he just shot him. Yeah. Well, Soundwave, he bent to whoever was in charge for the most part.
He played the politics.
He's like, I'm just gonna wait and see how this turns out. But yeah. Well, now that leads us straight to the most obnoxious and tenacious character in the entire series, no matter which show you're watching or what book you're reading or what toy you have.
Also the most consistent.
Yes, even in the movies. He was the most consistent character, and in the new movies, they even portrayed him correctly. One of the few things they did correctly. Starscream.
He should have been an F-15 in the movies, but whatever.
Well, you also got to remember, though, by the time the movies came out, F-15s were old hat. Hell, by the time we joined the Air Force, F-15s were old. Because what's the oldest F-15 is still in service is at our old base, 1975. This fucker was built when we were born,
and yet they beat the F-22 Raptor.
Yeah, that's kind of poor design. But for pop culture's sake, I understood why they made him F-22s. Right, yeah. But his characterization has been consistent through all the series, and plus he's been the most indestructible character. As weak and as whiny as this guy is, he manages to either weasel his way out, or they discovered in third season, which actually continued into Beast Wars, the cartoon, he had an indestructible spark. And that indestructible spark storyline went on for years. And even in the comics, he was killed and brought back again by Megatron as a pretender. And it was just... Starscream is the linchpin of the entire series. Without Starscream, nothing occurs.
Correct.
And even though he's the most important character, he's the most fucking obnoxious. And again, the Transformers movie had many gratifying moments. Optimus Prime's death notwithstanding, it had many gratifying moments. And the best one is Galvatron going, excuse me, you're in my fucking chair.
Who disrupts my coronation? Coronation, Starscream? This is bad comedy. Megatron? Is that you? Here's a hint.
Blam! And we're all like, yeah, why did Megatron kill that fucker eons ago?
Yeah, Starscream...
And one of the coolest death scenes in the Transformers ever.
I think the problem is that with Starscream, you had to make him an idiot. Otherwise, he actually would have taken over. if you didn't.
They made him a little smarter in the movies, the new movies, I think.
I think they made him smarter, depending on which episode.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, like, he built Bruticus. He's got this idea, he's got this plan, and then, they would have to, like, Thundercracker would, like, come in and just screw it up, or he'd shoot Megatron once and think that Megatron's dead. Like,
that's a classic horror movie mistake, right there.
I'm like,
double tap,
dude. Come on.
Starscream, watch Zombieland, okay? Always do the double tap.
Yeah. So, and that, like the Megatron would trip over a rock and Starscream would be like, Megatron is down, I'm the new leader. I'm like, dude,
shoot him first, moron.
And that's always what drove me nuts is like, you have this wonderful plans, but you try to take power at the dumbest ass times. Like,
that's true.
What the hell?
That is true. I was really hoping that they'd utilize Starscream more in the new Transformers sequels than they did, because they kind of set him up at the end of the first movie as the perfect Starscream. Yeah. That's exactly what Starscream was after, and then they kind of fucked it up in the next two.
Yeah, they kind of screwed up Megatron too.
Now, this is a little side note, but in the Beast Wars, his Starscream's indestructible spark actually led to kind of an offspring. I think its name was Rampage. They created Rampage in the image of Starscream in that his spark was also indestructible. And it was just kind of this weird story arc that just kept going for almost a decade. So Starscream, I guess it is okay that he's on there. We were just happy to see him die.
Yeah.
And I will admit, though, as a kid, when he came back as a ghost, I'm like, that's pretty fucking cool. He shows up and just possesses Scourge. And I remember him saying to Scourge, for the strong silent type, you sure do talk a lot. And then, tried to get... And that was the other great thing. They never resolved the story in the original series. At the end of Starscream's Ghost, he's hurtling through space because he got shot. And you're like... And even they say in the show, wait a minute, he's a ghost. How's he hurtling through space? So you're like, oh, Unicron rebuilt him. Cool. And then he never shows up again. Until Beast Wars, he kind of shows up a little bit. So... Yeah, I think that was... I guess he shouldn't be there. Now, Megatron, though, this is my biggest no. In terms of him being number one on the list. I agree Megatron should be on this list, but I firmly believe, and this was way fleshed out more in the comic books, that Megatron and Galvatron are two separate entities.
That's exactly what I said at the beginning of the whole thing.
Yeah.
They are not the same.
Since the comic books describe it better than the show does, I'll use that as a reference. The comic books, Megatron went insane. After he killed Optimus Prime in the comics, which is very different than what happened in the movies, he went crazy, and I think it was Starscream who tricked him into crossing the space bridge during an explosion, and he ended up getting injured and wandering around Cybertron for several years before he came back. Rather than go to the future of the movie, the comic book stayed in the present, and then a Unicron came early, as opposed to in the movies, he came in like our time, and then looked into his possible future and found Galvatron and pulled him back in time as his herald, knowing that that's in that timeline Megatron had become Galvatron. So basically, it's saying the comic books and the cartoon are two separate parallel universes. Right. And he pulled.
Which they always were.
They always were. And they pulled Galvatron and sent him. Now, in a couple occasions, Megatron and Galvatron met, and Galvatron was constantly trying to fight the insanity that was Megatron in his head. He was the more sane robot, but the Megatron was always in the back of his head screaming and making him do crazy shit. They kind of did that in the show a little, but they attribute it to the damage he suffered during the film. They say he was injured, and because of that, he became insane, like even more insane than Megatron was. So basically, you take Megatron's power, times it by about 10, and make him crazier. That was Galvatron.
Yeah.
And Galvatron, I think the Decepticons totally would have won had Galvatron not been crazy. Because even Cyclonus is like, you're batshit, man. What are you doing?
I think the problem with... The problem with post movie is Galvatron, Cyclonus, they weren't really a part of it. Like, they weren't the main. You had the Quintessons,
the Sharkticons and all that stuff.
Yeah, you had that angle going, and now we're fighting like, oh, the Quintessons made us, like this whole god theory.
Oh, thing. I know, which they did kind of in the comics, but differently.
All right, so it wasn't like they were fighting. The Autobots and Decepticons were fighting every episode.
No, they had other enemies. Yeah.
They had other
In fact,
enemies,
they even had one-shot enemies, like a bounty hunter.
Yeah.
And I forget the pigs. It was a pig guy. He showed up in like 1 or 2 episodes.
Yeah, so they had other things to do, which is, when you're dealing with the universe, it's just like Justice League or whatever.
They kind of tried to make it into Star Trek a little bit, where they had all these different aliens running around.
Well, what I was just saying, Justice League had different aliens and characters, whatever, one time. And that's what they did. But, you never focused on a storyline of, all right, Galvatron's mission was to get the Matrix, but he didn't really try that often in those 2 seasons to even appear.
He didn't complete his plan.
No, he didn't complete any plan. He
Well,
just kind of,
but you gotta remember in the movie he wanted the Matrix not for the Matrix sake, but to destroy Galvatron, and Galvatron was already dead in the 3rd season, kind of.
Yeah.
So,
but you know, instead
or Unicron, I should say.
Instead,
Sorry.
they focused more on bringing Starscream back and trying to figure out how to bring Optimus Prime back,
or making Grimlock smart. Remember that one?
Oh yeah,
when he built Computron. I love that episode.
So they focused on other things versus if they would have focused on a few more storylines against the Autobot Decepticon battle, I think that's where Galvatron would have beat the crap out of all of them.
The Decepticons were on Char, and they were fighting amongst themselves for scraps of Energon. And of course, Galvatron's completely insane. And Cyclonus and Scourge are like, "What the fuck are we going to do with these assholes?" Yeah, I remember all that. They were like pointless at that point.
Yeah, like the Decepticons were just scattered. And he couldn't really rally them. And I mean, even like the Shia LaBeouf movies, that's kind of what they turned into, you know?
Yeah. Well, they kept trying to introduce new bad guys.
Yeah.
You know, Jetfire was a bad guy, but he wasn't. He was just so old he didn't want to fight anymore. And well.
So I think, but yeah, Galvatron as a leader, as a character, could have been way better. If and I think it was just the fact that he wasn't in the series all that often.
No, not enough. But how do you beat Leonard Nimoy's portrayal? I think Frank Welker took over Galvatron after Nimoy. And then how do you beat that delivery, though? His delivery as... It'd have been like continuing Robert Stack as Ultra Magnus. I guess I keep forgetting that my favorite... The reason Ultra Magnus, I like him, the reason why I like Galvatron is the people who voiced them.
Right.
Whereas in the show, these guys are awesome. Frank Welker is one of the greatest voice actors ever. But you get used to his voice after a while. You're like, oh, that's Frank again. Oh, that's Frank again. You know, and I could be wrong. Could have been somebody else that did it. But still, there was only a group, except for Casey Kasem, who quit. Remember why Casey quit? He was Cliffjumper until the movie. And then he quit because of the way they were portraying Middle Easterners in the show as terrorists. Because Casey Kasem was Lebanese or something. And he quit the show because of that. But he was also one of the distinctive voices that you heard through the first 2 seasons anyway. I will say, though, well, I do think Galvatron should have been on the list and Megatron maybe should have been on, but not number 1.
Right.
We can at least agree on one character that's not on the list.
And I know exactly where
and he shouldn't be. Wheelie, that motherfucker. I hate that son of a bitch. He was a horrible toy. He was a horrible character.
I did like in the movie his introduction of messing with Grimlock. But after that,
when he became the new Bumblebee and was running around with... Now, when Daniel was running around with Hot Rod, it was cool. When Wheelie was running around with Grimlock, it was cool. But when you took Wheelie and combined him with Daniel trying to make the Bumblebee Spike relationship again, that was fucking obnoxious. In fact, they even acknowledged it. I remember in the 3rd season, after Bumblebee became Goldbug, he and Spike were trying to go somewhere they hadn't worked together for a while. And even Spike goes, hey, it reminds me of old times. Because the whole, as bad as Bumblebee and Spike were, Wheelie and Daniel were far worse.
Yeah.
The whole episode, one of the dumbest episodes ever, Ultra Magnus's birthday, just, I hated it. Wheelie and Daniel were the prominent figures in that whole episode. Yeah, I just can't, Anyway, but I'll note on here that we already mentioned Galvatron, I already mentioned Predaking, and Cyclonus and Scourge.
Now, here's the one thing that we did not mention, and I thought this was where you're going with your last comment.
Oh.
Number 6 should not have been, number 6, Bruticus should not have been anything other than another set of characters that were in the first 2 seasons.
And he did show up in the 3rd season, though.
Okay. But Bruticus it should have been the Insecticons.
Delicious space, Ratman. A little heavy on the electrons, Electron.
You know, I was waiting for them. I really wasn't waiting for them because the Insecticons played a key role in both the first 2 seasons and the film.
And afterwards, because Bombshell was still the scientist.
Which is, that was another argument we had as kids, because if you look at the movie, Bombshell is one of the guys who gets reformatted into one of the Scourge's hunters.
Right.
But then he shows up later on again, and you're like, what the fuck? You know, we're all pissed off. Granted, the people drawing the show and writing the show were like, why the fuck you have know that much detail? You're 10. I'm like, yeah, I'm 10. I got nothing better to do. But you're right, that was a contradiction. But yeah, Bombshell especially. The Insecticons should have been on this list. Like Reflector also should have been on this list.
The Insecticons were... So just as much as the Dinobots fought Devastator, they also just as much fought the Insecticons.
Because the Insecticons could make clones of themselves, an infinite number of clones, which is scary as hell.
If not more, they fought the Insecticons. The Insecticons were in a lot of episodes.
Yeah, they were.
Versus like Bruticus.
He's in like 2.
Yeah, you know. All right, a back-to-back, yay, and then maybe another one somewhere else.
Yeah.
You know? But still, the Insecticons played a key role, and everybody loved the Insecticons. Everybody loved the Insecticons.
The way they talked was hilarious.
The way they talked, the way they were.
There was another set of characters they kept recreating through all the medias, through the comics, the new shows. They kept recreating the Insecticons.
The way that, they were Decepticons, but they didn't give a shit about fucking Decepticon Cause or Megatron.
They were like the Dinobots in that same way.
They were like, fuck you. Give us our food.
Yeah.
We're basically mercenaries.
Yeah.
Up for sale.
They were the Zartan of the Decepticons.
Exactly.
Now, that leads me, though, to my favorite third season show, where they made Hot Rod, Ultramax, RC, and somebody else human.
Yeah, what was the helicopter? What was his name?
And the Autobot helicopter?
Yeah.
The only Autobot helicopters I know of are Whirl and Blades. Blades was one of the Protectobots, and Whirl was one of the male characters.
He was in the movie.
Springer.
Yeah, Springer.
I got better things to do tonight than die.
You know, I thought about him too, but Springer's kind of a one-dimensional character.
He is.
Which is ironic considering he's a triple changer. But, they made him, RC, Ultra Magnus, and Hot Rod, or rather Rodimus Prime, into humans.
Yeah, I remember that.
And Cobra Commander was in that episode. He played like this weird gun runner, and he always had a hood, but you knew it was Cobra because you could hear that Frank Welker voice, that hiss. And at the end, he goes, he yells, "Cobra!" and walks away. And that was one of the greatest episodes ever.
Wow. I do not remember.
You forgot that one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cobra Commander made a cameo in the third season of Transformers.
Nice. Yeah, I think the Insecticons got totally robbed by Bruticus.
Yeah,
totally
in the list, absolutely. You're right. Yeah. Well, I will say, and we said this the other night, but it may not show up. We'll say it a little bit better now. Part of the reason for our love of the Insecticons is, of course, as children, but that was the not the first bonding moment, but the defining bonding moment of our relationship was that line from the film.
Yes.
We told us. Yeah, we said it last night there, and we were driving along. Somebody was in our way.
The Insecticons are in our way. Wrong. They're our way in.
And we started laughing. We weren't even looking at the road at that point. That's because we didn't have an accident. Yep. But yeah, the Insecticons are pretty badass. That whole cloning thing is crazy.
Yeah, it was. That's oh crap.
What? You forgot something?
I mean, seeing the Insecticons clone themselves, like, I don't know what to do here.
Now, of the newer shows, the only ones I would really recommend, I'm watching the latest one. I don't even remember what it's called. I don't care for it.
What's that?
Bumblebee's a cop, and like he and Grimlock and Sideswipe are on Earth. It's supposedly a loose continuation of Transformers Prime, which is a good show.
Right.
That was an excellent show. So of the newer shows, watch Beast Wars, watch Machine Wars.
Well, Beast Wars is old.
Yes, it is, but newer than the original.
Yeah,
and it continues the original generation.
96 or something.
Yeah, it was one of the first CGI shows on regular, and it continues the G1 story, but it kind of travels back in time. It's really weird, but it is connected to G1. They even visit the Ark while the Autobots are unconscious, which is really a cool episode. You watch that one. Watch Transformers Prime, which is another CGI show, and it's on Netflix right now. Transformers Animated, I didn't like it first, but it grew on me. It was kind of funny. Like they went kind of goofy, like almost like Teen Titans with the Transformers. The newest one that's on right now, the newer one, I don't care much for that one. And there's a couple anime ones that I didn't care for. Technically, G1 continued in Japan for like another season, the Headmasters season. And I don't know. I've seen little bits and parts of it here. It doesn't really do anything for me. I'm gonna have you read those other comics one of these days. That's pretty much all I got.
I'm out.
We beat that one to death. This was Jay's idea, and I will say this about us. We mentioned this last night as well, which that part may not air, so I'll say it here. We've managed for at least a year now. We've managed to have, since Leonard Nimoy's passing was the last time we mentioned Transformers. It was the first year we did this show. We would mention Transformers almost every episode. Yeah. It would come up because that is the single most combining fandom that you and I are both in. I'm heavy into comic books. You're not really that. I'm heavy into Star Trek. You're not really into that. But Transformers is the one we're both into, pretty much equally.
Right.
And we both collected the toys as kids. We both watched the shows and the movies, and we've seen the whole new movies. In fact, that's another bonding moment we had many years later when you and me and a couple other guys from the base went to see the first Transformers film. And I'll say this here, you guys, anybody at the base will appreciate this. We're sitting there, and the opening scenes happen in the first shot where that helicopter lands, and it's on the base in, wasn't Qatar, but it was someplace else in Saudi or some PSAB probably or something like that. And the guy in the control room's like, you will shut down or we will shoot you. And here comes all these vehicles with guns. And I turned to my guy sitting next to me, including you, and I said, let me get this straight. Security forces are the first fuckers that are going to die in this movie. And everybody, I think there was 3 of us, but at least you guys all turned at the same time and go, yeah. Now, just for clarification, those guys listening to us, our old workers, know what I'm talking about. But Jay and I were both MPs in the service, and in the Air Force, they call them security forces. And those are the first guys to get their asses handed to them in the new Transformers movie.
Yep.
Which cracked me up. Somewhat ironic. So we got a good hour in here. I think I might be able to edit something out of this. So anything else before we sign off?
No, I'm out.
All right. Let's go take a nap.
Okay. Not together.
Not together. Episode of Friends. Check it out. All right. Bye.
Till all are one!
Thank you for listening to Rum Rants with Rob and Jay on Sterling Broadcasting. These morons can be reached on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and at rumrants@outlook.com. All copyrighted materials are used for review and discussion purposes only. No copyright infringement is intended by members of the Rum Rants podcast or Sterling Broadcasting. Thank you.